Welcome, fearless viewers, to another chilling tale from our realm of horror. Tonight, we delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche, where shadows lurk and fear reigns supreme. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community of horror enthusiasts. Help us reach our next milestone of 1,100 subscribers, as we continue to uncover spine-tingling stories that will haunt your dreams. Now, brace yourself as the journey into the unknown begins. It was 2016, and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights, Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, just checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which led to the swift training I had to endure. So, it was my first night alone on the night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork when a man walked in and asked if we had any rooms available. Usually, if someone seemed sketchy, my boss had me lie and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course, just for one?" And he replied, "Yes." So, I began creating the reservation on the computer. Then I noticed he started swatting the air and making spitting noises as if he were being surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't my business. I tried to check him into the room as quickly as possible. I gave him his key, and he was on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction to what happened next. The man came back from his room and slammed his hand on the glass door, causing me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I looked up to see him just staring at me. He cracked the door, put his head through, and said, "I can't get into my room." "Why won't you let me into my room?" My only defense was trying to be helpful, so I replied, "Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he was the one who trained me, though it was the middle of the night and he was asleep. I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back. I went into absolute panic mode. I ran into the back office, locked the door, and pulled out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when working at night. I heard the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Me, being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground and calling the police when I was feeling scared, decided to take the situation on alone. I replied, "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." I then started calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few deep breaths and then step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I started hearing him talking to himself angrily, saying, "Kill her." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he came out, and I said, "Your key was broken. I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room." He agreed. Thankfully, I was wearing a long-sleeved sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I began to walk outside, and he seemed insistent on walking behind me. We began making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stopped at a room, and I stopped at his room a few doors down. I smiled and said, "Oh, that's the wrong room. This is your room," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time, he was going to someone else's room and trying to open the door. I felt bad for them. I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye and ear out. The next night, the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told him we were all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take me seriously. I continued to work there on the night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened. If you ever feel uncomfortable, always call the police. The hotel I worked at was small, with only 53 rooms in total. It was located next to downtown in a town in central Minnesota. As a night auditor, I worked by myself with a shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. We didn't get many people checking into the hotel at night, usually 1 to 3 at the most. The first duty as the night auditor was to lock the doors so only guests could get in with their key. There was also a phone on the wall next to the main entrance in case someone arrived after the doors were locked, or if somebody ordered pizza. There was a front door in the lobby, a back door in the lobby, and 2 side doors. I proceeded to lock all of the doors and headed into the back room behind the front desk to do laundry, as there was no staff on hand to do laundry. Another task for the night auditor was to finish any remaining laundry that wasn't completed during the day. There was a cordless phone you could bring with you when going into the back or around the other parts of the hotel. We had no more scheduled check-ins that night, but there were a couple of rooms available. I heard somebody try to open the front door, but they were unsuccessful and left. Moments later, the phone rang. When I answered, the other person did not talk right away. I walked up to the front desk, and the other person finally started talking. They went on a spiel saying they were a former cop and something about having court in the morning. Forgive me, this part is a bit fuzzy, and I semi-blacked out due to fear. They said that if they weren't let in, they were going to come in and shoot me, and that they were circling the hotel. There were windows that looked out to the front of the hotel, which were visible from the computer I had walked to during the phone call. I told them I was sorry, but we didn't have any rooms available. They hung up before I even finished my sentence. I looked out the window, and there was a person standing across the street staring back at me with a phone in their hand. At this point, I was really freaking out. So I went to all the doors to double-check that they were all locked. It was a good thing I checked, because one of the side doors had been propped open with a doorstop. I shut the door and proceeded to go to a conference room with a view of where the person was standing. I kept the lights off and peeked through the blinds, but the person was gone. I was pretty freaked out for the rest of the night because there were windows pretty much everywhere in this hotel. If this person was watching me, they would be able to do so all night if they pleased. Back when I was attending university, I worked on campus at one of the dining halls during the dinner night shift. I lived in the next town over, as it was cheaper to live in a crappy little apartment out of town than in the dorms. However, I didn't own a car, so I had to take the bus. One night, I had just gotten off a shift at work. My feet were killing me, and I was completely exhausted as I slowly made my way to the bus stop. I noticed a man much older than me, sitting on one of the 2 benches at the otherwise empty bus stop. But I didn't pay much attention to him. I simply sat down on the second bench and listened to some music while waiting for the bus to arrive. The first sign that things were starting to get weird was when I kept noticing out of the corner of my eye that he was staring at me. At first, I thought I might be imagining it. So I looked over and caught him quickly turning his head to look away. Okay, so he was staring at me. This wasn't completely out of the ordinary, since being a young college girl seemed to gain me a bit of attention from older men. So like usual, I just ignored him. That was a mistake. Again, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him look at me. But instead of just staring this time, he got up and walked over to sit next to me instead. I continued listening to my music, hoping that he'd see the earbuds and take the hint that I wasn't interested in having a conversation. Instead, this man literally took the earbud out of my ear. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said as my head snapped to look at him in shock. I should have told him off for touching my things and demanded he leave me alone. But I was sort of frozen and didn't want to make him mad. "Hi," I replied quietly. He started introducing himself as Mike, telling me that he lived in the area and it was always nice to see pretty girls like me at the university bus stop. He explained that he was a real man, unlike the boys I went to school with, and that I should go home with him that night. I was a shy, scared virgin who had never had a man be as bold as this to my face. I say to my face because I had certainly gotten my fair share of unsolicited private pictures online by that point. But I digress. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. But that didn't stop Mike from continuing to explain to me all of the fun things he wanted to do with me at his place that night. He got into graphic detail. The things he described started out with basic things you'd expect and escalated to him asking if I liked being choked until I turned purple and passed out in bed. I wished there were anyone else at that bus stop, but it was just the two of us, in the dark alone, as I counted the seconds until the bus would arrive. Then Mike took things to a different level of shocking by telling me, "Listen, the demons want me to ask for your phone number. And they say you should give it to me, or you won't like what happens." He actually had the audacity to start stroking my hair. His hand was gentle, but I didn't want him touching me at all. This was shocking for a number of reasons. The demons. I wouldn't like what would happen. Why was he touching me? What the hell was this guy talking about? As though he could read my mind, Mike went on to explain, "My therapist knows the demons are real. I told her about them, and she says I'm not crazy, and the demons are real." He laughed, then abruptly stopped. "Now give me your phone number like they said," he demanded. And as his hand stroked my hair for the last time, he stopped and gripped the back of my neck. Still gentle, but even more terrifying. I was scared and obviously didn't want him to have my phone number. But he was taking out his phone, and I knew he was going to call the number I gave him to make sure I wasn't lying to him. And he still had his hand on the back of my neck. So I reluctantly gave him my real phone number. Stupid, I know. But I was right, and he immediately called to check. All I could think about was just not making this guy angry long enough to get away from him. Then I'd block his number. Thankfully, the bus came moments later. I sat down as close to the front of the bus, near the bus driver as I possibly could. Since the bus was basically empty, Mike decided to sit directly across from me. At this point, I had tried listening to music again, hoping that being on the bus and him having my phone number would signal to him the end of our conversation. However, he decided to reach over and unzip my sweatshirt, revealing my work shirt and the name tag, which I had unfortunately forgotten to remove in my haste to leave work that night. I hadn't told him my name yet. Abigail, what a beautiful name. Our daughter will be named Celeste. I shouldn't have been shocked at this point, but I was. I had stopped listening to music again and zipped my sweatshirt back up, which made him laugh. "You won't need that soon anyway," he said and winked at me, implying how he planned to undress me even further that night. At one stop, Mike tried to convince me to get off the bus with him. I told him no, that I was tired and just wanted to go home. So he said okay and stayed on the bus. I knew that had been his stop, so the fact that he was staying on the bus worried me. I was sure this meant that he was planning on coming home with me instead. "Baby," Mike whispered to me. I tried to ignore him, but he repeated himself louder, "Baby." He had the most unsettling smile on his face as I asked what. He laughed and told me, "The demons say you smell nice." I was terrified and felt like I was going to throw up by the time my bus stop arrived. I lived in an apartment alone and didn't want him to know where I lived. Despite my body being exhausted and sore from work, adrenaline kicked in, and I bolted off the bus and ran straight home. I made it inside and locked the door. I looked through the peephole and didn't see him, so I went to carefully peek out of my window and saw him standing near the bus stop looking around. He took out his phone, and sure enough, I started getting a call from an unknown number. Since I hadn't saved his number, I ignored it. When he hung up, I started getting several texts asking where I'd gone, how he didn't like hide and seek, and how the demons just wanted to have fun, but I was being a little bitch about it. I was so scared because he knew which apartment building I lived in, where I worked, where I went to school, my phone number, and my name. The only good thing which made me feel slightly relieved was that he didn't know which specific apartment number I lived in. That's when he started yelling outside. There were no specific words said, just wordless yells of what I can only assume were frustration and anger. I blocked his number and kept all the lights in my apartment off as I cried with my back to the front door. Maybe I should have called the police, but my brain was so frazzled that I didn't even think of that until the next day. By then, all I knew about him was that he was a mentally unstable man, probably named Mike, who hadn't actually done any physical harm to me, so I didn't think it was worth it. In hindsight, I know that I made a lot of stupid mistakes during this experience. I ended up moving away entirely at the end of that term of school for unrelated reasons. But until then, I switched to day shifts at work and was paranoid every night. Thankfully, I never saw the man again,